I'm joined on the line by the Sinn Féin TD, Rose Conway-Walsh. Rose Conway-Walsh, good evening to you.
Good evening, Aidan.
And welcome to the programme, as always. Three parties negotiating for the past several weeks. Obviously, not everything in every manifesto is going to be included in the programme for government, but if you look at Fine Gael, they'll be happy that there's going to be no increase in income tax or USC. The Greens have demanded a commitment to cut carbon emissions by 7% annually over the 5 years of the government, and also a ban on the importation of gas extracted by fracking. They'll be happy. And Micheál Martin making the point that it was a collective agreement of the three parties, and it has to go forward. The government has to go forward in a collective spirit as well. And isn't that what's emerged as a result of these talks? A government that will move forward collectively and with the collective spirit, and that can't be bad for the country.
Well, it's certainly a long and wordy document, Aidan. There's an awful lot in it now. Obviously, you can appreciate I've had little time during the day.
I understand that fully, of course.
It will certainly be my bedtime reading tonight. But looking at some of it, I mean, there is stuff you can agree, that you can disagree with on it. So we're looking, obviously, I have a special interest in rural development and that. So it says to support things, to have an interim leader programme or a rural development programme, and all of that. But it's a case, I think, of is this the change that people voted for? And I don't believe that it is. And many people who have contacted me today don't believe that it is. They believe that it's more of the same. And they don't trust Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael, no matter who they're propped up by, to deliver what's needed here, to change things about. I mean, it changes the landscape of Irish politics, certainly, because now you have the two civil war parties of Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael together. But does it represent a change in people's lives? And I don't believe that it does. But what I would say to people is not to give up on this. And this is what I've been saying to people all day who feel disillusioned about it and that they didn't get the change that they voted for. Because I don't believe that they can stop the change that's needed. They might delay it, those parties might delay it by producing a document like this and by going in together into government. But they certainly can't stop it. And we will have a huge job of work to do in making sure that change is implemented and a meaningful change is implemented that's going to change things for the better in people's lives.
Yes, but the word change was used throughout the campaign, and people probably take the view that change is whatever you want it to be. No one actually sat down and defined what change might be, unless, of course, that it was a government without either of the two civil war parties. And I think that Sinn Féin tried to put together a left-of-centre grouping or government, failed to do that, and in those circumstances then there was an obligation on Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael to see if they could put together a government where Sinn Féin had failed.
No, I think there was an obligation on Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael not to exclude any party, and certainly not to exclude a party who secured 530,000 first preference votes. Well, that's what they choose to do because they want to maintain the status quo. And that is clear, and it's been clear in this document. They want more of the same. We have seen for the past 4 years that they didn't change things, and indeed they haven't changed things for decades. But people have said they wanted a break from the past. I think that was clear in people supporting Sinn Féin in the last election. And while we have, Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael together, I don't think it's a break from the past. If we look at health, if we look at housing, they will say that, but they've said for decades that they will do things. They've said for decades that they will fix things. Now they're telling us, well, we'll do it now, we'll do it this time. And I don't believe that they will, and that's why I think that there is a big job of work for us to do. But I suppose the deal hasn't been endorsed by the party members yet. But the parties have agreed on it, and they've spent a long time.
And people within, certainly within Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael that I've been talking to before any agreement was, before any programme was agreed between the parties, aren't happy about Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael being in government together. So, it's not over the line just yet, that's for sure. But
there's a lot of disquiet about it from people, I suppose, who are who have followed Fianna Fáil or Fine Gael all of their lives and their generations before them. And, I was talking to your commentator earlier on today, or your regular commentator, Donal O'Shea, who has spent all of his life being Fianna Fáil, and supporting the party. And I joked with him, I suppose, that now he's Fine Gael also, in that they're together. And I think there is, in terms of people, having supported their particular party for years, now see really that there isn't any difference between them and that they're all together.
To what extent now, over the course of the next number of years, or certainly for as long as this government can last, Rose, is it necessary for the left to be led now by Sinn Féin, so that after the next election you will have the numbers? Because I think for as long as either Fianna Fáil or Fine Gael are in government, there is no change, no real change that people talk about. So that if there is going to be change, it's going to have to be a left of centre government, and Sinn Féin will have a very important point in all of that, and ensuring that the numbers are there and that the left can actually coalesce around. The left has been so fractured for so long that that's one of the reasons why it has advanced so slowly.
Yeah, we have a huge job of work to do, and we're very much focused on that. We need to be the best opposition and the strongest opposition that there ever has been in this state. And we will be holding the government, if this goes through, accountable for every bit of it. I suppose that's the fortunate thing in having a bigger team and the portfolios divided up, that each of us will be holding whoever's in government to account, to deliver for people who have been crying out for change and demanding that change across the country. So I think that will be important. And obviously to build alliances, because the way forward, in Irish politics, you're not going to have an overall majority, or it's very, very unlikely that you'd have an overall majority in the future. And I think it's important for like-minded parties and independents to work together to make sure that we deliver. And all we have to do is to deliver on the proclamation. It's not rocket science. We don't need pages and pages and pages of aspirational stuff. We just need to deliver on the proclamation and make it relevant. So make it relevant, say, for our carers, for those people who are trying to access the health service but can't do it because it's based on ability to pay rather than need, people who need a home and people who have a right to a home, and all of those things across the board. And here in rural Ireland, for proper balanced regional development, for the investment that we haven't had for decades. So it's about trying to deliver all that, and it's about us having a cohesiveness on the left to be able to do that. And I think Mary Lou McDonald, as the Sinn Féin party president and leader, is ideally placed to lead that. And I think we need to look forward, and I just think that people need to believe that it can happen as well, and that the change that the momentum that has gathered over the last number of months can be garnered into something really good for this country. But I don't believe that the proposals that are there at the moment in terms of government will do it without us making sure that it does.
You mentioned the proclamation, and many people would take the view that this country is a republic in name only. The real meaning of the word republic doesn't make its way down to people who are vulnerable or who are perhaps the lower reaches of society, if I can put it like that. But the left, if it's going to emerge as a government within the next number of years, is going to have to ensure that that's the case, and the policies which parties like you enact will have to be entirely different to what so many people are accustomed to. And I'm just wondering, in that context, it's very easy from the relative safety of opposition to say what you say, but once you have the task of government, that can be a very difficult and different situation.
I don't think it's easy at all. I think people voted for us. I think people examined our policies and our programme for government, our manifesto in the last election. And I think they saw something very relevant to themselves in that manifesto. So if you take, for instance, all this is happening at one level. And then today, I have a woman with disabilities, profound disabilities, ringing up in desperation because she needs some extra home help. She needs some extra assistance. Well, not extra, she just needs some help. And that's the case across the board with all of the people who contact us on a daily basis, is that people are being left behind and people are being forgotten about. And we cannot allow that to happen. So we have the policies to do that. We show every year, we have shown within budget how this can be done with our alternative budget. Now, a lot of this has been dismissed by the other parties all of the time, that it's fanciful and notional and all of that. Now, you do see in the document, and what I've seen so far, there are parts of the Sinn Féin manifesto within there, but even in terms of COVID-19, we see things that they said, couldn't possibly happen, like a one-tier health system, that it couldn't happen. But it can happen, and I think we have shown how it can happen, and we will continue to show how it can happen. So I think I would urge people not to give up or not to be disheartened by the other parties excluding us. And when they exclude us, they exclude the people who voted for us. They disrespect people, the mandate that we have been given, and that is the 530,000 people who voted for us.
Yes, but Rose, in this context of what happened with Fianna Fáil having 38, Sinn Féin 37, Fine Gael 35, the Greens 12 and so on, no party got a mandate in the true sense of that word, i.e. an overall majority. So therefore, like-minded parties would be Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael. Can they put together a government and bring in a party like the Greens? I mean, no party got a mandate if you interpret mandate as an overall majority.
No, but we got a substantial mandate, and we're very grateful to voters for giving us that mandate. So I think, you have to ask the question, why did Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael exclude Sinn Féin? Why is it that they wouldn't talk to us? Why is it that they wouldn't sit down and hammer out a programme for government?
Well, history might answer that question, Rose.
Well, it's not history. They want to maintain the status quo. I see it all of the time. They want things to remain as they are.
They might regard Sinn Féin as a slightly democratic party.
Slightly democratic. There's certainly not a slightly democratic party. The people who vote for us aren't. We work very hard for people. They didn't want the change. That's why they don't. I mean, they're all the time on about, Sinn Féin need to be, and when the institutions were down in the north, we need to have the institutions back up and running, and Sinn Féin need to get back into government. So it's okay for the north, Sinn Féin need to get back into government, but my goodness, they couldn't possibly have Sinn Féin in government here. The reason why they think that they couldn't possibly have Sinn Féin in government here is because it would upset the cosy cartel that's been going on for years and years and for decades. So, but as I said, they can delay that change, but I don't believe that they can stop it.
Very good. We must leave it there. I haven't had an opportunity to read the programme in any great detail, but certainly maybe later in the week we'll raise a number of issues with you that we can challenge you on in terms of the construct of this programme for government. But for the moment, Rose Conway-Walsh, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Aidan. Good evening.